Let's see if they're still applauding by the end of this 18-minute section. Paul Hickson, first of all. Paul, you are retired, aren't you? What's your question?
Good evening. My question is this. You sound gloomy most of the time. Are things really so bad?
No, but they could be a lot better. and that is the big argument of this election. You know, look, I think this is a choice between those who think this is as good as it gets for Britain and those who think we can do a lot better than this. I don't think it's good enough that we've got 700,000 people on 0 hours contracts. I think we can do something about it. And the Prime Minister said earlier that he couldn't live on a 0 hours contract. Well, I couldn't either. But let's do something about it. Let's turn this country into a country where if you work month after month, year after year, you don't end up on a 0 hours contract, but you have a legal right to a regular contract. That's just one of the changes that I would make. We can do a lot better than this. We're a great country. OK, let's whiz through these two, shall we? Oh, first round of applause. Paula Pearson is next. Where are you, Paula? What's your question for Mr Miliband? Paula.
I'm proud of my working-class background, and I'm now a high-rate taxpayer. Labour's messages often leave me feeling demonised and ashamed of earning a good salary. How can I vote for you when you make me feel like this?
Well, I'm going to try and change... Let me see if I can change your mind. Look, I think that the thing that's happening in Britain at the moment is it's the very richest in our society, and I'm talking about, like, the top 1%, people earning over £150,000 a year, who are doing sort of OK. And I think lots and lots of people, including on middle incomes, are finding life really tough. Now, the question is how we do something about it. And I hope you'll get a different message from me tonight, if that's the message you've been getting from me. Let me give you an example. Tuition fees. Some people have criticised me for wanting to lower the burden of tuition fees from £9,000 to £6,000 because they say it'll help middle-class families. Well, too right I want to help middle-class families, because I think lots of families are saying, if my son or daughter is leaving university with £44,000 of debt, that isn't a good situation. Let's do something about it with fair changes. So, look, I want a country where you feel you're not struggling, you can get on, and that's one of the changes we'd make.
If you're a socialist, does that mean that you're anti-wealth creation?
No, I think wealth creation... It says on our party card, democratic socialist. I think that wealth creation is an incredibly important part of building a more prosperous society and a fairer society. But look, the difference with me, Kay, and this is important for the audience, is I think the way we succeed is not simply with those at the top doing well, but all working people succeeding. Look, I say it's when working people succeed that Britain succeeds. Now, that might sound like a political slogan. It isn't. It's actually a reality of the way a country gets on. So if hard work's rewarded for everyone, not just the bankers with six-figure bonuses, if you get a regular...
Sometimes seven-figure bonuses.
Or seven-figure bonuses. If you get regular hours, you know, and you've got some security if you're going out to work and doing the right thing for the country, if you're having an NHS that you can rely on, that's better for the whole country. OK. I think we all benefit from that.
OK, let's bring in Luke Tucker next. Where are you, Luke? What's your question? You're from Tower Hamlets, I believe.
Yes.
Hi, Luke.
Hi. If you are Prime Minister after May the 7th, what will the budget deficit be in pounds at the end of 5 years, and how will you achieve it?
So, 75 billion we're going to inherit. We want to balance the books by the end of the Parliament, and we want to cut the deficit every year. And we're going to do it by doing three things. First of all, we'll have fair taxes. We're going to reverse the change that David Cameron made, cutting taxes for those earning over £150,000 a year. Secondly, there will have to be spending reductions in areas outside some priorities like health and education, because we do need to get the deficit down, and I'll make no bones about that to you. That's going to require difficult decisions. But thirdly, really important other thing we've got to do. Why is it that the Conservatives promised to eliminate the deficit and haven't done so?
Let's not talk about the Conservatives.
Well, no,
let's talk about what you do. I'm sure all our audience remember with Liam Byrne, though, and the note that was left behind.
I understand that. I understand that, but I want to draw a lesson. Because the reason why that hasn't happened is because living standards have fallen, so tax revenues have fallen. So the key to getting rid of the deficit is that third element, the tax changes we've announced, the spending reductions, but that key third element of raising living standards. If we raise living standards in this country, we'll also get the tax revenues in and the deficit down. OK, let's bring in Veronica Monti next. Veronica, what's your question?
Why is Labour prepared to deny the people... Over here, sorry.
Hi, Veronica, yeah.
Hi. Why is Labour prepared to deny the people the freedom to choose whether they wish to see their country become a fully fledged member of the EU?
I want us to stay in the EU, Veronica. And as you say, it's not my priority. to have a referendum on whether we should leave the European Union. Let me explain why. I think when I look at our country, I know what my priorities will be as Prime Minister: to tackle the cost of living crisis, to rescue our NHS, to build a future for our young people. I think leaving the EU will be a disaster for our country because I think we rely on its jobs and the trade we get from being in the EU. I think strategically for Britain, whether you want to tackle terrorism or climate change or a whole range of issues, we've got to be an outward-looking country. And so that's not my priority. Now, I have said, and this is unlikely to happen, but I have said that if there's a transfer of powers from Britain to the EU, a further transfer of powers, we'd have an in-out referendum. But it's not likely to happen. And look, that's what leadership's about. It's saying what your priority is. I don't want us to leave the EU, so why would I call a referendum in 2017 and plunge the country into 2 years of debate about something I don't want to see happen?
So just to clarify, if you win the next election, you would not call a referendum in that 5-year period?
I've said it's unlikely to happen. I've said that the lock for the British people...
That's not a definite no.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't, because of the criteria I've set. But I'm making no bones about it, Kate. It's very unlikely to happen.
OK.
Because I've said that if there's a transfer of powers, it will happen, but that doesn't seem likely at the moment.
Right, that's a politician's answer, though, isn't it?
Not sure. Not sure.
Sunil Jagota. Hello, Sunil. What's your question?
Hi, over here.
Oh, hi. Sunil, yeah.
Do you not think that your brother would have done a better job?
Oh.
Hold on. He was better qualified and better positioned.
OK. Well, it'll surprise you to know that my answer is no. Sunil, let me explain why. Look, it was a difficult contest between me and David, and it was a bruising contest. Why did I stand? I thought somebody needed to lead the Labour Party who could move us on from New Labour, because I thought that was the time that was necessary for the country and necessary for our party. And I had strong views about how we needed to change the country. I think this country is too unequal, and we've got to change. I think New Labour was too relaxed about inequality. I think we made mistakes on foreign policy, like on Iraq. We made mistakes on immigration, too. Maybe we'll come to that. But I thought I was the best person to move the party on. And I stood because that's what I felt was the right thing for the country. So I think I am the right person for the job. I thought it then, and I think it now.
I wonder, though, Mr Miliband, what regrets you have about creating such division in your family?
It's hard. Well, it's hard. I'll make no bones about it. It's hard.
In what way is it hard?
Well, because it was bruising. I mean, you know, it was bruising for me. It was bruising for David. It's healed, or healing, I would say. Just being completely frank with you about that. But...
So you did fall out, or...?
Well, we had a very difficult contest, so it was very difficult.
Did you not talk, or...?
No, it wasn't that we didn't talk, but it was, I would say it was strained, not surprisingly. But look, I care deeply about this country. I believe I'm the right person to be Prime Minister, and I thought it when I stood in 2010. And I wouldn't have gone through all of that if I didn't have pretty strong convictions about how we need to change Britain.
Your poor mum.
Yeah, she's a pretty hardy soul.
I'm
she's
glad
a pretty
to
hardy
hear
soul.
it. Let's bring in Lynn Gaff now, should we? Hello to you, Lynn. What's your question this evening for us? Just in the middle there.
Hi, Lynn.
Mr Miliband, do you think socialism remains an important and evident Labour Party value? If so, why and how?
Well, I call it democratic socialism. That's what's on our party card, Lynn. Yes is the answer, because I believe in a fairer, more equal society. Now, each generation of Labour politicians puts it into practice in their own generation. Now, what does it mean today? And it goes back to the question that this lady asked, which is what I see in Britain. And, you know, this is the thing that countries all around the world are grappling with. This is the central question we face. Are we going to be countries that work for the richest and most powerful? This is what America is facing, President Obama as well. Are we going to be a country that just works for the richest and most powerful, or is everyone going to get a fair shot? Is everyone going to play by the same rules? If you kind of do the right thing, go out to work, are you going to be able to build a life for you and yourself and your family? Lots of people are doubting that in Britain. To the gentleman who asked me whether I was too gloomy, that's why I think it sometimes might sound that way, because I think people are asking, hang on a minute, this country was supposed to work for me. Why doesn't it work for me anymore? I'm doing what everyone tells me I should do. So that's what democratic socialism means today, a fairer, more equal society, making this country work for working people again. What do you think, Lynn?
I think that there needs to be revisited, those values within the Labour Party currently.
OK.
It needs to be reaffirmed.
We thought that you've got your hand up there just here in the second row. You just wanted to ask a quick follow-up question.
What's your name?
Can you just wait for the microphone? There we go, you've got it now.
What's your name?
How are you, Harry?
Harry, hi.
How are you going to be different from Nick Clegg and their broken promises, or David Cameron and his broken promises? Are you just going to sit here and sugarcoat things and sweeten things up so we can vote for you?
No.
Or are you actually going to give us some security and actually follow through your promises?
No, I'm going to follow through on my promises. Now, look, all politicians say that. You're going to have to make a judgment tonight about whether I'm going to do it. Let me give you a very specific example that goes back to this point about tuition fees. Look, in 2011, I said I wanted to cut the tuition fee to £6,000, right? And then as the Parliament wore on, some people said, Miliband's going to break his promise just like Clegg did. And, you know, it's the right thing to do to cut tuition fees to £6,000, and I'm going to do it, and I've shown how I'll pay for it. And I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do, but I'm also doing it for another reason. Because trust in politics is so important. It's so important we rebuild trust. I sometimes say, Harry, I want to be the first politician to under-promise and over-deliver, not over-promise and under-deliver. Now, I'll come back in 5 years if I'm Prime Minister and you tell me whether I've achieved it or not.
Okay.
But I've tried to set out some promises that I know I can keep.
Interesting to think what politicians think about each other. And you'll remember, perhaps, we asked Matthew Brown in the first half of our town hall debate, so it's only fair to put the same question to you. What do you think are David Cameron's best qualities, given that you have previously called him a chicken and a bully?
I'd say two things about what David Cameron has achieved as Prime Minister, which I admire. The first is his commitment to equal marriage. It was hard in his party. It's the right thing to do for the country. And second, and this isn't going to be universally popular, his commitment on overseas development and 0.7%. And now there'll be some people who don't like me saying that, but you know he took a risk in the Conservative Party by saying this is the right thing to do, and he's kept to that, and I think it's right that he did.
So you think he's a decent enough bloke then? Would you have a pint with him?
I don't know whether we'd have a pint. Look, it's hard. It's hard. It's hard. Look, it's hard when you know, we share a bacon sandwich or something. No, look, you know, it's hard when you're in politics because you see me and him shouting at each other at Prime Minister's questions, and it's not very edifying. Let's be honest, not a great advert for politics. But as he said earlier, it's hard to avoid the back and forth.
OK, let's bring in Geoffrey Louis Reid, just here at the front. Where are you, Geoffrey? Just here.
Ed, my question to you is this. You've made it quite difficult for your supporters and for people that are undecided.
OK, that's not a great start.
Well, the reason is that you've had a few gaffes recently, and you don't really seem to be fighting for the values that your party stands for.
OK. Well, look,
meaning, you know, places like Cressingham Gardens, which is the Labour Council in Lambeth, or museum closures because of the decimation of arts budgets and austerity in general.
Okay.
Well,
Geoffrey,
look, Geoffrey, first of all, austerity, Tory austerity is happening, and the cuts you're talking about in the councils are happening because of the Conservative government's decisions. Our spending plans are very different from theirs for the future. They want cuts bigger in the next 3 years than the last 5. But let me go to the other point, which I think is implicit in your question about gaffes, so-called, right? I'm not going to win a contest for who looks best eating a bacon sandwich. I think we can all agree about that. And
well, it's not happy with your answer. They're shaking heads and all sorts of things.
Right,
Can we get a microphone there, sir?
Look, can I just make this one point and then I'll do
very
it from the
quickly,
gentleman.
if you would.
Look, what I stand for, what I think matters in politics, is ideas to change the country, principles, sticking to your principles when you've got powerful opponents like the energy companies or the banks or Rupert Murdoch, and frankly, decency. You know, reaching out to people who are the most vulnerable in our society.
OK, so what did you want to come back with?
My question is, everyone in this country remembers 13 years of a Labour government under Blair and Brown, OK? And you talk about austerity to us, but the reason there's austerity is because all the money was spent, everything was thrown away, nothing was planned for a rainy day, and all I hear is you say, well, it was the global economy and it was a global crisis, yes, but the liberalisation of the banks and everything came from your party. And what I want to know is, if people are going to vote Labour, can you promise us that you've learnt from the mistakes that led to the mess that we're now in?
What's your name, sir? Tim. Let me be very specific on that, Tim. We were wrong. Sorry?
It's Dean.
Dean, sorry. We were wrong on the regulation of the banks. We got it wrong. The banks were under-regulated, right? Now, other people were saying we should regulate them even less, but we were wrong, along with countries all around the world and regulators around the world. I'm sorry we got it wrong.
Okay.
And we've got to learn from that, and I believe I have learnt from that in my 5 years as leader of the opposition.
But has Ed balls?
He absolutely has.
Because I don't understand how you can
But he was the first person to say we've got to make sure that the banks are properly regulated in the future. But let me say something else. The banks have got to work better for our businesses. That is a problem that goes back decades. These historic problems that we've got to solve.
OK, let me just put the final question from Andy Palmer. Andy's saying, why is Labour only neck and neck with the Conservatives in the opinion polls after 5 years of opposition? Sky News poll of polls today, 279 seats for you, 278 for the Conservatives. You'd be steaming ahead and you're not. Why?
Look, I take an old-fashioned view on this, which is let's let the people decide in 6 weeks' time, Kay. I'm not a commentator. Look, we were coming out of government in 2010. It's hard when you're having to be a one-term opposition. But the thing I'm interested in is this big battle about the future of the country, and the people are the boss. And let's see what they decide on May the 7th.
Would you believe we're out of time?
We're out of time.
Already.
Already. Oh my goodness.
18 minutes gone. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Mr.
Thank
Malone.
you.
And thank you all very much indeed. We've not finished just yet, though. Coming next, Mr. Miliband's head-to-head with Jeremy Paxman. That's going to be worth watching. Stay tuned.